Chapter 564. Early the next morning, the morning wind was mighty and there were no clouds in the sky. Princess Odoheim was ordered by Dushless to return to the Fishman Island early. This was also the result of her pleading. Of course, it was also her last trip to the Fishman Island. In addition, she also had a special task given to her by Dushless. The Fishman Island had long been regarded as a forbidden place by Wuchen. Whitebeard had unscrupulously occupied the island. How could Wuchen just watch the duck that was about to reach his mouth disappear without a trace? Especially that old guy had a close relationship with the former pirate king Joel D. Roger. There was a great possibility that he would get the news of the ancient weapon Poseidon from Roger. Whitebeard's ambition has to be guarded against. Although the surface and Nakagami, red hair, are righteous people, it is undeniable that he is a big pirate king as cunning as a rabbit. Roger and Shiki of the three legendary pirates have already fallen, and now only Whitebeard is performing. Dustless Sama, Whitebeard's fleet only has a small number of personnel stationed on the Fishman Island, which does not constitute a substantial threat. The people of the Whitebeard pirates are also quite educated, at least they didn't do such things as robbing. White Zetsu explained, and his words showed admiration for Whitebeard. He is afraid that only the Whitebeard pirates can restrain the inferior pirates to such an obedient level. Hearing that Whitebeard is not on the Fishman Island, Dustless's heart relaxed, at least he doesn't have the idea of the ancient weapon, Poseidon. What about the traces of the CP9 brats yesterday? They should have gone to report to Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Wearing pajamas, sitting leisurely on the sofa, Dustless asked calmly. Brats? Hearing this, White Zetsu was stunned at first, and then understood that Dustless was talking about the CP9. He said, they didn't. They seemed to have gathered to discuss it yesterday, but they didn't say anything after discussing it all night. It is estimated that they went to Gorosei, 5 elder stars, or Commander Kong to make a choice. White Zetsu said truthfully, although he didn't know why he cared about a few minions, he still collected information seriously. This kind of thing is beyond the scope of what the CP9 can do. It can only be solved by finding a higher-level person. Commander Kong and Gorosei are the best candidates. That doesn't matter. It's the same no matter who knows about the 5 honored stars or Commander Kong. Moreover, if I'm not wrong, the results of their actions should be the same. Dustless smiled calmly. He had already guessed the decision of the 5 honored stars. On the avenue of Mariehua, all the members of the CP9 looked very unnatural. It's not that they suspected Blueno. They trained together when they were children and they were already honest with each other. They would never be bored enough to suspect that he was a traitor. Even if Bruno's explanation was reasonable, in their eyes, it was extremely far-fetched. Even if some people were really careless, what they said casually was not something they could pry into. Since you doubt me, let the 5 great elders decide. Bruno was too lazy to waste his breath and simply kicked the ball to the 5 great elders. Lucci saw all this, and his heart burned with a blazing flame. He was particularly irritated. He always felt that this was a trap, and even if he knew, he had to fall into it. Even if it's really out of thin air, no one can resist the temptation of the ancient weapon, Pluton blueprint. When they first heard that Pluton's blueprint was in Water 7, they fell into a trap. That kid must have done this on purpose. In the spacious and bright hall, the highest power of the world government, Gorosei, 5 great elders, lived here. This is also the place where they usually discuss and work. The Gorosei, 5 great elders, who had bronze skin and blonde hair, had a cold look in his eyes. He was sure that Dustless did this. He let Blueno hear the news about Pluton's blueprint on purpose. The purpose was to attract their attention. Indeed, he designed a trap that we had to fall into. The bald Kuang Lao Xing who was holding the saber frowned and said. There was an evil and cruel aura between his eyebrows. They had always been in the upper hand in the past several fights with Wu Qin. They hadn't expected that the counterattack would be so fierce this time. They were caught off guard. Even if it's nonsense, they must send undercover agents to check it out. Rumors come from nowhere. Water 7 was responsible for the construction of Pluto, so it's normal for other blueprints to exist. The Gorosei, 5 great elders, said with a face full of wisdom. He was the tallest among the 5, so he immediately attracted the attention of the other 4. The other 4 Gorosei, 5 great elders, nodded in agreement. It's not impossible to keep a copy of Pluton's blueprint just in case. Anyway, this isn't a trap. We're definitely going to fall into it. With a sigh, the Gorosei, 5 great elders, said helplessly. They used to be the dominant force, but now they're suddenly pulled down. With the help of the Pluton's blueprint incident, that kid painstakingly led our attention to Water 7. It's definitely not a good thing. He must be secretly planning some unknown conspiracy. The Gorosei, 5 great elders, said gloomily. It's not that they haven't schemed against Dustless before, but every time they were easily broken by him, and they were slapped in the face. Hearing this, the other 5 elder stars all had gloomy faces, including the 5 elder stars with long hair and beard who had been talking loudly before. In the past, they had also fought with each other. They were the ones who played dirty, but in the end, they were the ones who were played dirty. Now that Dustless took the initiative to make a move, they really didn't have much confidence in winning. It doesn't matter, we will send a few CP9 members to Water 7 as spies. They were the ones who discovered Pluton's blueprint, so it doesn't matter if they are spies. Even if they all die in the end, they are just small pawns, it's not a big deal. The Gorosei, 5 great elders, with a scar on his forehead said coldly. Everyone knows this simple truth. Instead, it was Huey who came later who got there first. I don't want you to. Glancing at Dustless in disappointment, Yuluo's eyes were dim and lifeless. Her silvery hair had also become much whiter. Her entire body was emitting an extremely powerless feeling of hesitation and loss. Her heavenly beauty gave others the feeling that she had become much older in an instant. Seeing this, Dustless's heart clenched, and he was just about to persuade her when the clear and melodious cry of a child resounded. Woo! Dustless was stunned. Looking at Kagaya's delivery room, his body turned into a gust of wind and rushed forward. Breaking the door and entering, a stunning woman with golden hair was reflected in Dustless's eyes. She was dressed quite casually, with light makeup and no makeup, and her skin was as white as snow. She didn't need to be deliberately dressed up. Her whole person was natural and unrestrained, giving people a very magnanimous and natural feeling. Looking around, it was Tsunade with golden hair. As a medical ninja, she knew much more than Dustless, and the task of delivering the baby inevitably fell on her. At this moment, Tsunade was holding a little doll carved out of jade in her hand. Its black eyes were moving nimbly, and its delicate skin was as white as snow. It was no different from Kagaya, and there were 2 cute horns on its head. Staring blankly at the tender child in Tsunade's arms, Dustless spontaneously felt a sense of blood connection, and an inexplicable special force connected him and the baby in swaddling clothes. Yeah. It seemed that it also felt a sense of intimacy with Dustless, and the tender baby waved at Dustless with its fangs and claws. Its dark eyes were sparkling with tears, and it was anxious to get out of Tsunade's arms. It looked like it was about to cry, and it evoked the sympathy and pity that had disappeared for countless years in Dustless's heart. Heartless little brat, wasting so much of my energy. You forgot about the midwife when you saw your father. Tsunade rolled her eyes and angrily handed the baby in her arms to Dustless. She put her hands on her hips and shouted, "This heartless little girl is as heartless as you. No wonder you are father and daughter. You don't know how to express your gratitude to me. After all, I was the one who delivered the baby." Even if there is no credit, there should be hard work. Tsunade complained with dissatisfaction. This little girl was too much. She cried and made a fuss in her arms, but when she was in Dustless's hands, she immediately smiled. Seeing that Dustless and the baby in his arms were so close, Tsunade's calm eyes were filled with jealousy. Then she walked to Dustless's side, and her slender fingers gently pinched the little girl's little face and teased. "Is it a girl?" Remembering what Tsunade said before, he subconsciously looked down at the lower body. "I think the surname should be Otsutsuki. The Uchiha surname is indeed glorious, but it's already a thing of the past. Now, everything has changed, and I'm in a foreign country. All in all, there's no need to respect those ridiculous truths." Glancing at Dustless, Haruo said her intention, and the determination in her eyes was unshakable. "What you said is true." Kagaya nodded towards Dustless to express her point of view. From the beginning to the end, Kagaya has maintained a contemptuous attitude towards Uchiha. It's just a branch of Otsutsuki, and as Haruo said before, there is no need to adhere to the rules in a foreign country. Yeah. Seeing that she was ignored, the little girl's inarticulate voice sounded. She seemed to hear the conversation between several people and quite agreed with Haruo's statement. Seeing this, Dustless's forehead was full of black lines. Dustless can't change the principles summarized by the ancient sages at will, and the idea of children following their father's surname has been deeply ingrained. It's impossible to change Dustless easily. Ahem, clearing his throat, Dustless chuckled and said, "It doesn't matter. I am a very democratic person. What the surname is, it will be decided by her in the future." Pointing to the baby in Kagaya's arms, Dustless said, "If you are democratic, you should vote." Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tsunade said contemptuously. She knew that Dustless deliberately played Taiji fish to fool her. In the future, as long as she is tempted a little, this little girl may change sides and jump into Dustless's arms. Children are always naive. Up to you. Huey clearly didn't want to dwell on such a question. She just focused on teasing the red-faced smarty, occasionally letting out crisp laughter. Everyone, including Dustless and Yulu Otsuna, looked at the scene in front of them harmoniously. When the cold Kagaya revealed this kind face, it was no less than the sun rising from the south. "She will be called Yushi from now on." After a moment of silence, Wu-chin gave him a name. It was not appropriate to call him that. Even if he didn't have a surname, he needed a name. Otsutsuki Suki or Uchiha Suki, sounds good, but is there any special meaning? Yuluo nodded in satisfaction after trying to read it 2 or 3 times. Then, he turned to Dustless and asked expectantly. This name was indeed not bad and sounded quite elegant. Huiji also hummed the new name of Little Smarty. After a while, she revealed a knowing smile. It seemed that she was quite satisfied with the name Dustless gave her. However, the baby in her arms puffed up her cheeks and bared her fangs at Dustless. She seemed to be extremely dissatisfied, but her protest was ignored by everyone. Meaning? Is this necessary? Just say it smoothly. Dustless was speechless by Yuluo's question, and he went straight to the point. After the words fell, even Kagaya stared at Dustless with dissatisfaction. Chapter 567. There was an insurmountable gap between the thinking of modern people and ancient people. It was impossible for them to accept Dustless's thinking ability in a short period of time. After hundreds and thousands of years of changes, the generation gap was not something that could be ignored. Fortunately, after a while of talking, Kagaya and the others reluctantly accepted Dustless's proposed name, just as Dustless explained before. The name was not important, the most important thing was to communicate with each other. The key was the meaning. Although the explanation was extremely far-fetched, after some coaxing and pestering, the girls nodded in agreement. Dustless originally wanted to let Kaguya and her daughter see the outside world. Being trapped in the system space for a long time was not a long-term solution, but Kaguya unexpectedly refused. The reason was quite simple. With the addition of the little life form Yushi, Hui's boring life was no longer monotonous. Compared to before, it was much more colorful and interesting. Her ambition that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth slowly faded. Forget it, looking at the mother and daughter entangled in harmony with each other, Dustless also stopped the plan to take little Yueshi out. This was too cruel and unfair to Kaguya, and Dustless did not have the skills to take care of children. It was enough to let her live quietly and peacefully. You are too easily satisfied. Also, my dream is still a bubble. Seeing Dustless's complacent expression, Yuluo was quite dissatisfied. She did not hide the blame in her tone. The plan in her mind to give birth to a nest of children had not been realized yet. Just go with the flow. You also know that this kind of thing depends on fate. In short, you can't blame me. Dustless shrugged, with an expression that had nothing to do with him. Yuluo's mouth twitched, and gloomily stared at Dustless. No one was an idiot. Dustless's words implied that there was a problem with her body. She wanted to refute, but there was no way to refute. Dustless and Kaguya hit the mark, and countless times with her, there was no movement at all. This had already quietly explained everything. This is an illness. It has to be treated. Dustless gently patted Yuluo's shoulder and said with a smile. The ridicule in his tone was not concealed at all. Following which, his body dissipated without any warning like a breeze, forever disappearing from this world. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace, and his aura was completely gone. Warm sunlight poured down from the 9 heavens. The whole world was bathed in the scorching sun. It was full of vitality and vitality. It made people temporarily forget that this was an extremely distorted world. Coincidentally, some people were not used to this warm sun. The Akagami, red hair, pirates, who had escaped from death, were desolate and bleak. Chapter 568. Getting the promise he dreamed of, Doflamingo left Mariewa with a wild laugh, and the unscrupulous laughter seemed to mock the helpless and angry look of the navy after being attacked by him. In the dark, Doflamingo has seen the old face of Fleet Admiral Sengoku. On the balcony, Dustless glanced indifferently at the battleships sailing away, and he could even see that Doflamingo was standing on the deck. Master, aren't you spoiling him too much? Hancock, dressed in a maid's uniform, came quietly and gently massaged Dustless's shoulders on both sides, and the technique was extremely accurate. Doflamingo is ambitious, like a wolf or a tiger, and it is common for dogs to bite their masters in the end. Dustless closed his eyes comfortably and enjoyed it comfortably. After a while, Hancock's massage skills improved by leaps and bounds, and the fatigue on both sides of his shoulders was swept away. Don't worry, it's just a small pawn. Hearing this, Dustless replied casually, and his indifferent tone obviously never put Doflamingo in his heart. No matter how beautiful the Monkey King's conspiracy is, even if it is flawless, under the shroud of the 5-Finger Mountain, he is always insignificant, just a tiny particle among hundreds of millions of floating particles. The consequence of a mere Taowu wanting to shake the world was like a moth flying into a flame, seeking its own destruction. If he could be tactful, Dustless didn't mind continuing to raise Doflamingo. If he dared to resist, within a breath, Doflamingo's blood would splatter 3 feet, and his head would be taken. So there is no need to worry about it, just use it with contempt. What's more, that kid has been suppressed by me for so long, and the hidden wildness in his heart and the anger that has been accumulated for a long time in the past few days has released extraordinary destructive power. A mad dog that goes crazy. Sengoku will be troubled. Taking the crystal glass handed by Hancock, shaking the red liquid in it, Dustless then drank it, and the red residue left on the corner of his mouth combined with his gloomy face was particularly strange. He was the complete opposite of the sunny Dushless from before. Now, he was like a demon in human skin. Dushless was able to put himself in the shoes of those who were truly loyal to him and treat them calmly. As for insignificant characters like Doflamingo, it was fine to throw him away when he had no value. Doflamingo was only temporarily attached to Dushless. In the future, when his wings were fully grown, he would leave him. When this chess piece no longer had any value, it would not be too late to kill him. After losing the restraint of Dushless, Doflamingo, the ferocious tiger beast, finally revealed its sharp fangs and devoured one navy battleship after another. The bloody storm set off by Don Quixote swept across the world, and the entire marine headquarters was covered with an unprecedented dark cloud. Bastard, Doflamingo, this beast, one day I will tear him to pieces to vent the hatred in my heart. The angry Sengoku tore the information in his hand, his eyes were bloody red, and his whole body was releasing a huge oppressive aura, and the whole office was shaking. Bah! After swallowing confidential documents, the goat whined twice and fainted. Doflamingo was a celestial dragon. Even though the Don Quixote clan had given up the privilege of being a celestial dragon, Doflamingo was still a celestial dragon from the beginning to the end. This identity alone was enough to render them helpless, not to mention the mastermind behind him. This damn ant was obviously extremely fragile, but he always jumped around and ignored the marine, and even smacked the marine's face. Sengoku's feelings were self-evident. This was the feeling of having to suffer in silence, unable to voice out the bitterness. Humph. Boom. Caca. Staring coldly at the proud and arrogant Doflamingo in the newspaper, Sengoku saw Doflamingo laughing at the marine. He didn't even think about it. He condensed the original transparent air shield in his hand and directly shattered it, turning it into goose feather-like fluttering snow. Bang bang bang, the dull sound of knocking on the door made Sengoku frown. When did the marine become so unruly? When he was about to verbally reprimand, a tall figure directly broke the door. That guy Z left Marin on a battleship. Without waiting for Sengoku to ask, Garp, who was wearing a dog head hat, said. Hearing this, Sengoku frowned deeply, and his voice was hoarse, and he said seriously, his students were slaughtered by that bastard Doflamingo yesterday. Maybe he went to find trouble with Doflamingo. Yesterday, the marine's ship unfortunately encountered Doflamingo, and almost all of them were killed, and only a few escaped. With such deep hatred, how can Z swallow his anger? A few years ago, Z's wife and son were brutally killed by pirates. At that time, he hated pirates, and now the new hatred plus the old hatred aroused the flame in Z's heart. The destination of that guy's voyage is not the sea where Doflamingo is located. Garp shook his head. Sengoku suddenly looked at Garp with his pupils enlarged, and his old eyes were filled with awe-inspiring luster. A bad idea swept through his mind, and his fists were as big as a bucket. Looking at Sengoku's eyes, Garp nodded and said in a heavy tone, Z is likely to take the students who survived to Mariewa to question the man. Z knows that temporarily repelling Doflamingo won't solve the root of the problem. Only by completely stopping Royce South can he stop Doflamingo's plot against the marine. But Z is a very intelligent and sensitive man. He shouldn't fight with him. So there is no need to worry. Garp said with uncertainty. He also had doubts about what he said, but he just hoped so. Sengoku smiled bitterly and regretted for a while. If he had given the position of 7 warlords of the sea to Doflamingo, there would not be such a situation. Just as he was about to get into the system world, the sound of the den den mushi in his arms came into Dustless's ears. He frowned slightly and then took out the black den den mushi. This is... Z, what is he looking for me for, or is it for Doflamingo? The doubts in his eyes turned into speculation. Dustless learned that Doflamingo recently killed many of Z's students. Chapter 570. Time slipped away unknowingly, and in the blink of an eye, 5 hours passed quietly. In the spacious and bright room, Dustless looked doubtful, and his deep black eyes restored indifference. He was sure that Z's visit was not a good thing. The weasel paying a visit to the chicken is not a good thing. Doflamingo's recent lawlessness, Dustless also heard a little about it. But in his view, it was just a small fuss. The effect was negligible. Unexpectedly, Sengoku chose to compromise and agreed to Doflamingo's conditions and promised him the position of Shichibukai. I'm afraid that old guy is also tormented to the point that he can't stand it anymore. Dustless had some admiration for this clown Doflamingo. Doflamingo ambushed the Marines, most of them were young and had good qualifications. Once these people grow up in the future, their room for improvement is infinite. Even 1 or 2 of them can become the mainstay of the Marines, turning into fertile soil to protect the towering tree of the Marines. However, Doflamingo had cut him in half at the waist and killed him mercilessly. More than 90% of the freshmen were taught by Z, and they get along with each other day and night. Their feelings must have reached a very deep level, and even reached a deep level of father and son. So that's how it is. You know it's useless to deal with Doflamingo, so you came to me. Giving up what's close at hand to seek what's far away. Wu Chen's gentle expression was full of contempt. He instantly understood Z's intention, but do you think it's useful to find me? Relying on your strength, you want me to yield. That's a fantasy, Z. Frankly speaking, Dustless quite sympathized with him. He worked hard for the Marines all his life, and when his life was about to wither, it was his student Borsellino, Kizaru, who personally sent him to his death. The rise and fall of the Marines are caused by the Marines, and they are destroyed by the Marines. His feelings are pitiful, his actions are excusable, but his crime is punishable. Dustless sneered. A tall and broad figure walked in. He had purple hair and wore glasses. If one ignored the cold glint in his eyes, he was dressed quite elegantly. The two of them looked at each other. Because of sitting on the stairs, Dustless was taller than Z. Dustless was looking down at him. First of all, Z's aura was already at a disadvantage, which made him quite uncomfortable. I still remember that you are the honorary admiral of the Marine, so why did you choose to be the enemy of justice? Clenching his fists, countless blue veins were vaguely visible on his arms. Z coldly questioned, what Doflamingo did was the result of your indulgence and indifference. At the end of his speech, Z's eyes were emitting cold air. Towards Doflamingo, Z couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. Unless he directly killed him, he wouldn't be able to solve the problem. You came all the way here. Sit down and soothe your throat first. Pointing to the left side of the sofa, Dustless signaled Z to sit there. As for the cold questioning tone, he ignored it and quietly tasted the fragrant tea in his hand. As if nothing happened, Dustless was unusually quiet. This kind of indifference made Z's resentment towards Dustless soar. Justice. Z, you are not young anymore. All day long you still talk about justice. Sometimes I really feel like you are a child who hasn't grown up. Looking at Z, Wu Chen sneered and didn't hide his sarcasm. I think you are a child who hasn't grown up. You don't understand the essence of justice. Z's old face tightened, he didn't hesitate to show weakness. Then tell me your understanding of justice. I'm all ears. The corners of his mouth curled up with a hint of ridicule. That pair of deep eyes flashed with ridicule, as if he was sizing up a clown, looking down at Z from above. Their identities were suddenly reversed. Dustless was more like a deep audience, quietly waiting for the clown's performance on the stage. What kind of attitude is this? Z's tone raised a few decibels as he said in an even more oppressive tone. Dustless's indifference and even contempt had touched Z's bottom line. His student was killed. Dustless not only didn't show any sign of remorse, this cold and perfunctory attitude made Z feel contempt. This is my attitude towards the justice you speak of. It doesn't matter who is right or wrong, because the final say is not in their hands. Lightly glancing at Z, Dustless said without any emotion. What is justice? When you ignore this inherent definition, you will find that the one who can judge evil and justice is actually the one with the biggest fist. Justice. The winner is the justice. It's so simple. For example, Dustless's mouth raised a cold arc. His body disappeared in an instant and disappeared into the darkness. His speed has reached the realm of perfection, escaping the perception of Z's observation hockey. This guy is using some kind of ability to move, not relying on the speed of his body. Z's body stiffened. Now my fist is bigger than yours, so I can judge that you are an evil person. If I say you are guilty, then you are guilty. A demonic whisper entered Z's ears, followed by a flash of golden light. Armament hockey hardening. With a low shout, the surface of his body was replaced by a dark color. Z had long predicted that Dustless would take the opportunity to use armament hockey. Clang! An ear-piercing boom spread throughout the entire room, and an invisible ripple spread out, causing everyone to feel dizzy. All the decorations in the room instantly exploded. Caw caw caw, under the impact of the brute force, the geographical position of the entire room was dislocated. Despicable. Knowing that Dustless is an ability user, Z's right arm was also covered with armament hockey. His fist was enough to smash a giant building, and he mercilessly punched his head. Chapter 571. Z was shocked and angry. He originally wanted to persuade Dustless to stop and restrain Doflamingo. But he didn't expect Dustless to reach for a yard after getting an inch. Just because of a verbal disagreement, Dustless attacked. He turned his face faster than flipping a book. Caw caw caw, the powerful fist that was enough to crush a Navy warship suddenly fell on Dustless. He didn't dodge and his brain exploded in an instant. The ground was splashed with dark red blood stains. The scene was extremely bloody and violent. He was blown out of shape. That's impossible. Instead of feeling happy, Z tightened his nerves. His observation hockey spread out, guarding the surrounding environment. If Dustless could be killed so easily, he would have died hundreds of times. When he first came to Mariewa, he was defeated by Dustless. Even if Z used all his strength at that time, he was still afraid of Dustless's power. At that time, Dustless didn't break out all his strength. The humans in your world are really monsters. Physical skills can be practiced to such a terrifying level. It's obvious that you are already in your twilight years but still have such a powerful strength. Incredible. Z's voice was full of praise. Then he saw that Wu Qin was still sitting in his original position and was still savoring the fragrant tea in his hand. He was sizing up Z from a bird's eye view. When he turned around, he saw that Wu Qin had disappeared into thin air. The bloodstains on the ground also disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened. Everything was back to the original problem. Not only that, Z also felt an abnormal pain in his arm. This guy, when did he do it? I was the one who defeated him, so why is this happening? Z's eyes solidified, looking at his smoking arm. His gloomy face was hard to hide. He can penetrate the defense made by my armament hockey. Has he reached such a level at such a young age? Looking up, Z saw that Z's right arm has been completely penetrated. The wound was as big as a thumb. It was obviously a scorching type attack. The wound has been burned and it's only a minor injury. Was what just happened an illusion? For the first time in his life, Z felt that his eyes were blurred and there was visual confusion. Reality and illusion are often only separated by a single thought. Everything is like the moon in the water. What you see is only the reflection of the light in the water, it is only a pure illusion. Seeing Z's face full of hesitation and bewilderment, Wu Qin explained in a soft voice. Just a few casual words, but it contained the truth of the world. Z suddenly became enlightened. He looked up at Dushless, who was close at hand. Even if it only takes a few short steps to reach Dushless, the gap between them gave Z a sense of powerlessness. Even if it was only a few inches, Z was sure that as long as Wuchen wanted to, he would never be able to touch him. This was not a gap in strength, but a huge gap in dimension. It was a gap that was difficult to cross just by relying on hard work. Why didn't you kill me? You can injure me, which means you can take my life. Z asked in a deep voice. His tone was full of puzzlement and deep doubts. Carefully looking at the small wound on his arm, Z suddenly understood that this was not a life-and-death battle but more like a fight between children. Dustless casually smiled and didn't want to be serious. Casually playing around is fine. There is no need to fight to the death. Z was shocked that he was like a powerless clown. He couldn't make waves. He could only be controlled by Dustless. He was even sure that if he wanted to, he would have been killed on the spot by Dustless. Your life will naturally be taken by someone else, that's all. Staring at Z with deep meaning, Dustless shook his head without leaving a trace. He can see that Z loves the Marine very much. For this, he was willing to give up his life. Today, he dared to face Dustless head-on. This shows that he is willing to give up everything. However, in the later days, such a person who loved the Marines so much without any hesitation hated the entire Marine headquarters to the bone. He wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. The huge contrast really makes people feel that the world is fickle and the fate of many ghosts. There is no need to kill you because Doflamingo has become one of the Shichibukai. His thumb slightly hooked and the newspaper floated in front of Z. The content that caught his eyes was the laughing Doflamingo. At this moment, he has become a member of the Shichibukai organization. Z looked at Doflamingo in the newspaper, his previous worldview gradually collapsed. He didn't expect that Doflamingo, this kind of butcher, could join the Shichibukai organization. A large number of Marine rookies died in his hands. How can this garbage join the Shichibukai to show off? He killed countless Marines and didn't get the punishment he deserved. How can Z accept this? Most of the Marine interns who were killed were his students. If you want to blame someone, blame your own fate, Z. Staring at Z's pale face, Dustless had some sympathy for him. Z in front of him was like a candle in the wind, extremely fragile. The Marine who was loyal to him betrayed him. It's not hard to imagine how he would feel. I'm afraid he is completely disappointed and desperate. This kind of thing can't be accepted by anyone. This guy's heart is very broad. Wuchen secretly said in his heart. He admired Z a little more. If someone dared to betray him, even if he chased him to the ends of the earth, Wuchen would tear him into pieces as a warning to others. Unknowingly, Z's mentality began to quietly change. For the Marines he loved in the past, his heart's desire to protect them gradually decreased. There was even a bit of hatred in his heart. However, he still suppressed this irritable feeling of resentment. Dustless saw this and just smiled. The reason why Z betrayed the Marine is not because of other factors, but because he was forced to embark on this thorny road of no return. You bastard, don't tell me you want to. Hearing this, Z's eyes were about to split open. His eyes were burning with flames. He wasn't an idiot. What Wuchen meant was that he was going to make a move on that group of students. A peerless master without the slightest cultivation, despicable to such a shameless degree, he would choose to attack a group of students who have no power to truss a chicken. This is the first time Z has seen it. Caw caw caw. Without thinking, Z broke the window and jumped out of the 10-meter-high window. His body fell straight to the ground and swept toward the battleship docked on the shore like a hurricane. Z was determined to protect the remaining students even if he had to risk his life. This old guy is really fickle. He just said that there is no Marine admiral who retreats without fighting. and now he is running away. Staring at the black ink spots that have gradually disappeared in the distance, Dustless touched his forehead and seemed quite helpless. His tangled tone seemed to be a headache for Z. Young master, when did you send someone to attack his crew? Hancock elegantly stood beside Dustless, tilted her head and curiously asked. Dustless didn't contact anyone for a quarter of an hour. When did he order his men to attack Z's fleet? She was really curious. Attack? I didn't send anyone to attack, I just used Z's mentality to worry about his companions. In the final analysis, he is still a righteous person. In his eyes, the lives of the students are more important than mine, so he was so impatient. Dustless replied calmly. He was just using Z's mentality to make a sneak attack. If at this moment Z was replaced by a Kainu, he wouldn't care about this group of people. Anyway, it's just a few insignificant pawns. It's not a big deal. No one will care about it. Every day, there are countless soldiers all over the world dying in battle. Master, you are really cunning. Hancock didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect Dustless to be so proficient in playing tricks. But will he go and come back? Her eyes fell on Dustless's body. Hancock asked with concern. Z's strength was unfathomable, and the entire Mariewa might be destroyed by the fight. Of course, this is only the case where the five deliberately indulge. Well, thinking of Z's nature, Wu Chen's eyes flashed with a bone-piercing cold light. He sneered, I've given him a chance. If that old guy really comes back, then I'll take his little life. The sonorous and powerful voice contains confidence. Z is very powerful. Dustless also has 100% certainty to take him down. No one can pose much threat to him. But then again, Doflamingo's next goal is the king of Dressrosa. With his forehead squeezed together, Dustless remembered that Doflamingo has become a Shichibukai. I am afraid that his next plan is to seek the position of the king of Dressrosa. Caesar can also secretly create Pluto under his protection. Perfect and consolidate Dustless's ambition to unify the world. Chapter 573. Returning to the battleship, Z's face was twitching, the students were snoring and sleeping, there was saliva on the corners of their mouths, their expressions were rich and comfortable, obviously they were having a good dream. Who is that guy? Looking at the direction of Dustless's villa, Z's heart was mixed. He knew that this was Dustless' intention to let him go. Z was also prepared to die in battle, but he didn't expect Dustless to play this kind of trick. No matter from any point of view, this is an unsolvable dead end. After thinking about it for a while, Z no longer entangled himself. There was a saying that it was better to live than to die. Since he knew that Wu Chen intended to let him go, it was impossible for him to foolishly go back to die. After resting for about half a day, Z chose to leave Mariewa. These remaining students were really tired and needed to be given time to relax. Looking around, Z's current students, many of them will become the future mainstays, such as Smoker, who has outstanding strength, they are all here. Above the tall building, looking down at the battleship far away, even if it has become a tiny black dot, Dustless can see it clearly under his eyes. For him, distance is just a concept. Separated from each other by the ends of the earth, it is also insignificant. It seems that you are not a reckless man. Retracting his gaze, Dustless walked into the room with light steps. A huge narrow map came into view, and it was densely covered with red and white flags. White represents the navy, while red represents the pirates. The whole map is almost occupied by the red pirate flag, everywhere in the four seas, as well as the New World. The power is far larger than Marine. It is a behemoth that can crush Marine. With such a big disadvantage, the Marines should have been strangled. The actual reason why they were able to survive until now was because the pirates were in a state of disunity. Otherwise, if all their forces were concentrated, the Marines would have been wiped out forever. In the future, the Yonko, 4 emperors, Whitebeard pirates almost destroyed the Marine headquarters. The power of all the pirates in the world can be imagined. How to lead one's own forces to survive was indeed a question worthy of consideration. Although Dustless's current strength could be said to be invincible, nothing was absolute. There was absolutely nothing wrong with taking a long-term view. The next step should be to obtain Dressrosa, to help that old brat Doflamingo ascend the throne. His gaze fell on the narrow island of Dressrosa. Dustless's eyes, which were usually calm, were filled with the flames of ambition. The weak are prey to the strong. Since you can't keep up with the times, you can only bid farewell to this world, royal family of Luke. Living a comfortable life would only cause creatures to stop evolving and lose the will to forge ahead. Dressrosa was like that now. On the other side of the den mushy, Doflamingo was stunned. He didn't expect Dustless to be so ruthless. But after thinking about it, he thought that this is indeed a feasible plan and the most effective and direct. A group of ants is dead. Anyway, the number of towns destroyed by Doflamingo can be counted on 2 hands. One more island is not a big deal. The surface gives people a feeling of extreme evil. A coldness that pierces the depths of the soul spreads from it. When the host of the fruit was killed, the ability would not disappear. Instead, it would appear in a different form. From the beginning to the end, this devil fruit would not escape the control of Dustless. Even if it was eaten by Whitebeard in the future, he could just kill him. After accidentally discovering the devil fruit, the first thing these loyal subordinates of Big Imam thought of was not to tell Big Imam about the boss. Instead, several crew members with evil intentions silenced their companions. He intended to take the devil fruit for himself. It is reasonable to have evil intentions. The devil fruit illustration handbook recorded that this dark fruit is the evilest fruit in history. How can such an introduction be an ordinary thing? This sudden change was also beyond Dustless's expectations. Although this was the case, it was also what he wanted. Because of this, it was more confirmed that this was the dark fruit, so that some people with ulterior motives would think that this was hearsay. Because of the uneven distribution of the loot, it caused the crew to kill each other. This kind of thing happened everywhere. The episode of killing between the crew added a lot of suspense. The devil fruit that can cause the crew of the Yonko, 4 emperors, to kill each other must not be ordinary. This also confirmed the identity of the dark fruit. Secretly, Dustless used the huge privileges of the Tenryubito to add fuel to the fire. In just less than a day, this news that should have been limited to the Big Imam pirates swept across the New World like a hurricane. Enough to destroy the New World, the strongest dark fruit in the world appeared in the Big Imam pirates, and it was accompanied by several undeniable photos. Such shocking news appeared in newspapers all over the world the next day, and it became known to the world at an incredible speed. Among them, the most shocked was Big Imam, one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. To be honest, it was just a devil fruit. Although it was powerful beyond imagination, Big Imam didn't care much because she was already an ability user, and the devil fruit was useless. What made it most difficult for her to accept was that the people who killed the crew were the few people she trusted the most, and they secretly did such a dirty thing behind her back. It was unforgivable. Those who tried to take the dark fruit were melted by her inhumane use of gastric juice. Big Imam also knew the temptation of the dark fruit. It was definitely not worse than Whitebeard's tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. However, the name of the Big Imam pirates was enough to stop those pirates. Although there were some who came to ask for the dark fruit, it was best to be mercilessly dismembered. Bastard, of all people, why did you have to go to that old hag? The night sky was particularly quiet, and the tall Blackbeard roared angrily. His eyes were fixed on the devil fruit on the screen. He could be 100% sure that this was the legendary dark fruit. Thinking of Baigu Mamu's terrifying strength, Blackbeard broke out in a cold sweat. His heart was filled with fear. Unlike the heroic great pirates, Blackbeard had a huge disadvantage, or it could be said that his character was flawed. Whether it was Hundred Beast Kaido, red-haired Shanks, or Whitebeard, they all turned a deaf ear to life in the battle and held the mentality of fighting with their lives. Only Blackbeard was afraid of death. Of course, this is also human nature. It shows that compared to other pirates, Blackbeard is more cunning and realistic. He considers his life in everything. If his life is gone, what's the use of getting the dark fruit? The cautious Blackbeard naturally wouldn't be an idiot to fight Big Mom alone. Chapter 576. Inside Mariehua's villa. White Zetsu performs his daily fixed duties and informs Dustless of all the important information collected, and Dustless uses the unparalleled power of Tenryubito to spread the news of the dark fruit, and the whole world is shrouded in a giant vortex. The bottomless invisible vortex is spreading, attracting the eyes of the major forces. Although the ability of the fruit varies from person to person, if you find a good seedling and cultivate it a little and give it to them, it will be a powerful battle power in the future, and it can even reach the level of an admiral. It is self-evident what it means for a pirate group to have a super battle power comparable to an admiral. Big Mom is also a smart person. These days, he is looking for the right candidate, but he suddenly realized that there seems to be no such person in his huge pirate group. How many people are worthy of trust if the person she once trusted can steal the dark fruit without her knowing? Maybe many people have already planned how to take the head of her captain. There were as many talented people as there were carps crossing the river. Whether or not they were completely loyal was a big question mark. Such a serious question had to be handled carefully. Otherwise, if they nurtured an ingrate, the gains would not make up for the losses. Blackbeard has been staying in the Whitebeard pirates with peace of mind, and there is no big movement. White Zetsu whispered, and he couldn't help but look at Blackbeard. Blackbeard is much calmer than he imagined, and he can maintain a clear mind in the face of fatal temptation. Blackbeard knows that the more urgent the matter is, the more important it is to have a calm heart, so he is currently as calm as a stone, but silently chooses to observe the movement. Baigu Mamu was not a gentle sheep. Anyone who dared to touch a tiger's but would end up being torn into pieces. Don't underestimate Blackbeard. There will always be a time when a wild beast shows its fangs. His ambition is not to settle things peacefully. He is only waiting for the perfect opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. Dustless said softly, his indifferent tone was filled with certainty. The value of the dark fruit is equivalent to Blackbeard's second life. How can he give up his second life if he is afraid of death? The most cunning creatures in the world are humans, and the most treacherous among humans are those who have abandoned their dignity. Dustless said calmly. His words flowed like a river and were filled with absolute wisdom. To them, victory, defeat, glory, and personal dignity can all be laughed away. And Blackbeard is precisely such a person. Needless to say, Blackbeard did not care about personal glory. To him, fame and fortune were just fleeting clouds. He was powerful and had once seriously injured Red Hair. The 3 scars on Red Hair's eyes were all thanks to Blackbeard. Even so, he was content to be a small soldier under Whitebeard, abandoning his dignity and glory to be an ordinary crew member, abandoning the fame and fortune that pirates value the most, and living in obscurity for decades. In addition, Blackbeard was extremely greedy for life and afraid of death. Every time he schemed, he would bear the brunt of it. What he valued the most was his own life. Compared to those who risked their lives for another and viewed life as a feather, Blackbeard was far inferior. This was his bad habit, but it was also Blackbeard's biggest advantage. It was because he was greedy for life and afraid of death that he was able to display what he had learned and plan all his plans to the point that they were flawless. This was the only way to ensure the safety of his little life. That is to say, Blackbeard is waiting for the best moment. White Zetsu said. Dustless heard the words and nodded slightly. The probability of Blackbeard making a move is 0 if he is not 100% sure. What is 100% absolute certainty? At least he can save his own life, otherwise, it would be useless to get the dark fruit. Then again. Staring at White Zetsu, Dustless suddenly turned around. After a little thought, he asked directly, what is the recent movement of Doflamingo? Although the current main plan is to stir up trouble with Big As Mom and Whitebeard, the trace of the clown Doflamingo is also very important. Dustless also needs his Dressrosa to build Pluton. This, White Zetsu's face changed slightly, and he was suddenly speechless. He looked at Dustless with a little timidity. Witnessing the cold, emotionless, machine-like Dustless, his scalp couldn't help but tingle. Doflamingo used birdcage on Dressrosa. The outside world has no way to know the specifics, but according to the raging flames in the town and the scene of blood flowing like a river, at this point, White Zetsu's tone stopped. The meaning behind it was self-evident. Dressrosa was now like a second world isolated from the rest of the world. As for the specifics, only the initiator, Doflamingo, and the heavens knew. In short, there is no need to think about it. Dressrosa is definitely bleeding like a river now. That kid, his strength is average, but he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. After a moment of silence, Dustless said with ridicule and disdain. According to Dustless's speculation and his strange movements a while ago, it is estimated that Doflamingo is preparing for the artificial devil fruit in advance. Early the next morning, the sky in the distance turned white, the sun rose high, and the fiery red morning sun dotted the whole world. The warm feeling made people lazy and couldn't help but want to go back to sleep. On the ship, Blackbeard did not sleep for the entire night. Even so, he was still full of energy. His eyes were shining with awe-inspiring luster. There was an indescribable sense of confidence and ruthlessness between his eyebrows. It was the complete opposite of his usual introverted aura. Blackbeard narrowed his eyes. He was as cunning as a rat. The gaze that shot out from the slits of his eyes was exceptionally vicious. It was as if he was choosing to devour someone. His cold lips were raised high. Even though he concealed his smile very well, one could still see the curve of his lips. After a night, he had already thought of countermeasures to deal with it. It is definitely not possible to fight alone. He can only fool the Whitebeard pirates to fight together. Whitebeard is very rational and smart, but it does not mean that the IQ of his crew is unfathomable. Chapter 577. Ha ha ha, Blackbeard's face was full of fanaticism, and his longing eyes had already seen the scene of him stepping on Whitebeard's body to become the supreme hegemon. Gritting his teeth, he was filled with boundless hope for the future. After enduring patiently for several decades, he might be able to prove his Tao and become a god in a few days. From then on, he would step onto the path of light. Why are you laughing so early in the morning, idiot Titch? My dream of becoming the pirate king was ruined by you, Titch. Don't mind him. He always has this kind of silly moment. The awakened Whitebeard pirates complained with dissatisfaction, their eyes full of grief, but even so, they only protested verbally, and this scene was not surprising. Everyone thinks that Titch is a trustworthy person. Subconsciously, they have regarded him as a brother. I'm sorry. You know, I'm extremely optimistic. Sometimes my body can't help but vent its excitement. Scratching his head awkwardly, Blackbeard put on an honest look. Although it looked neither fish nor fowl, no one doubted him. The Whitebeard pirates were also speechless. They all thought that Blackbeard was showing his true feelings. A group of idiots. On the surface, he was smiling, but in his heart, he was cursing the group of idiots in front of him. After following Whitebeard for a long time, they had also developed a heroic spirit. Their hearts were as broad as the vast sea. However, for a cunning pirate, this is not a good sign. If you want to survive in this chaotic world, you can't be careless with anyone, even your companions are no exception. No one knows what's in the other's mind, so it's better to be careful. Regardless of this group of people, he looked at the person washing on the bow deck. It was Thatch, the captain of the 4th Division, and he was also a good friend of Blackbeard. Of course, he has a good relationship with Thatch. This is the reason why Blackbeard deliberately pulled him into the relationship. Thatch is approachable, and he is much more naive than the suspicious Captain Mark and the Diamond Josu. It also shows that he is much easier to deceive. Pull him into the water, Whitebeard can't ignore it. It's better to let Thatch get hurt. This will inevitably arouse Whitebeard's anger and he will desperately fight with Bigu's mom. Blackbeard was very proud. After observing Whitebeard for nearly 10 years, he had figured out Whitebeard and the temperament of this group of crew members. What drew these crew members from all over the world and with different skin colors together was Whitebeard's broad mind and the sincere feelings between them. Once the crew members are bullied and wronged, the entire Whitebeard pirates will attack them. Captain Thatch, it's not good, my father is in danger. Realizing that there was no one around, Blackbeard squeezed out tears from the corners of his eyes and ran to Surd's side. His bitter and pained face was 10 times uglier than the death of his father. What do you mean? Being suddenly asked by Blackbeard, Thatch's face was full of confusion. Obviously, he didn't realize what Blackbeard meant. He just puzzled, although my father's body is getting worse year by year, he can live for another 10 or 20 years without any problem. Whitebeard's physique is extraordinary and he is beyond normal human beings. After becoming one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, the number of people who dare to provoke Whitebeard has gradually decreased. Recently, Whitebeard has rarely made a move and has a lot of time to rest. You are talking about a natural situation without the interference of external factors, but for example, with a sly smile in his eyes, Blackbeard raised his voice and said, "The world has not been calm recently. No one dares to provoke the Whitebeard pirates because of my father's name. But as you said, my father's body is getting worse year by year. One day, he will be dragged down. At that time, other pirates will dismember us." Blackbeard pretended to be anxious and worried, looking like he was worried about the country and the people. This scared Surd into a daze. This is indeed a major problem, but there is no need to worry about it. Thatch obviously heard the meaning of alarmism, but he didn't doubt Blackbeard. The idea of the Whitebeard pirates' crew being a family has been deeply ingrained in his mind. It is impossible for him to doubt his brother. He didn't expect Blackbeard to be more insidious in his calculations. That is also a matter of more than 10 years later. There is no need to worry about it now. By then, we will be able to support one side of the sky. Thatch said confidently as the haze was swept away. You are such a half-baked person. There will be no stage for a vassal like you in the future. His heart was full of contempt and disdain. He sneered at Thatch's confidence, but on the surface, he was very heavy. That was before. Now the situation has changed. After a pause, Blackbeard said, "The appearance of the dark fruit is bound to increase the strength of the Bigumam pirates in a short period of time. Maybe soon, there will be one more powerful battle power. You know what it means. Although we have no direct conflict with the Bigumam pirates, no one will care about their territory." Thatch's expression solidified and he nodded thoughtfully. This is indeed a big problem. The sudden appearance of the dark fruit will increase the strength of the Bigumam pirates. Although there is no direct conflict, the Yonko, 4 emperors, are all potential competitors, which is known to all. I've had enough of the fish. Looking at Thatch vaguely, Blackbeard smiled. It was not difficult to see from his expression that Thatch's heart was shaken. When he was about to add fuel to the fire, his back suddenly felt cold. Chapter 578. Blackbeard's brows furrowed tightly together. Even though it was just his intuition, he was a suspicious person by nature. The sudden appearance of this strange feeling made him extremely uncomfortable. It was extremely difficult for him to ignore it and pretend that nothing had happened. Maybe it's really my illusion, his observation hockey spread, and after a careful perception, he noticed that there was no one around. It was dead silent. Only occasionally, there were a few solitary birds passing by. Blackbeard's suspicious heart was quiet. He turned his head and continued to talk to Surt about the perfect plan to save his father from the fire and water. Is that man Blackbeard? I thought that dushless Sama was exaggerating about him. I didn't expect this guy to be so unfathomable. His strength is different from what he showed on the surface. White Zetsu in the depths of the ground was stunned. About half an hour later, he realized that Blackbeard's ship had left. He came out of the ground and sucked in the fresh air of the outside world, trying to calm himself down. White Zetsu's heart was pounding wildly. Once Blackbeard locked onto him, White Zetsu was 100% sure that he would be killed or killed. Blackbeard was not a good person. But it seems that dushless Sama's strategy seems to have succeeded. Staring at the battleship in the distance, Baiju raised his eyebrows and sneered. The master who created him was Wu Qin. He understood Wu Chen's means better than ordinary people. Being unable to live or die was just the beginning. Each person who looked down on dushless all had abnormally miserable endings. No, this idea is really idiotic. How could this group of clowns who were casually played with know that the person behind the scenes was dushless Sama? White Zetsu smiled bitterly at himself. The world regarded this as an accidental accident. Sending out the strongest fruit with the title of history's evilest, the dark fruit, calmly as bait, there is no such person who can have such a temperament. To some extent, this possibility does not exist. There is no absolute in the world, no perfect plan. Any plan designed by people always has unknown flaws. If it is eaten by others, the loss is not worth the gain. In fact, Dustless was willing to give away the dark fruit. He was able to let it go and never cared about the gains and losses of the devil fruit. Even if he was eaten, it wouldn't change anything. Time flew by. Unknowingly, several days had passed. Time was precious when you cared about it, but when you ignored it, it became worthless. He completely ignored the concept of time, and everything passed extremely quickly. War is cruel and ever-changing. The Bigamam pirates got the news of the dark fruit. Due to Dustless's reclusion behind the scenes, at first, it was just pirates from the New World. As time passed, some pirates from the Four Seas also heard the news. Bigamam is terrible, but there are some evil people who are not afraid of death, and then they provoke the Bigamam pirates 3 times in a row, trying to get the favor of the goddess of luck. Of course, they still received the grim smile of the Grim Reaper in the end. This group of people is the main force of this battle. In the dark ice cellar, there were coffins placed neatly, which was used by Dustless to store the corpses, including the corpses of the previous Hokage. They were responsible for the main combat mission this time. Summoning Jutsu, Edo Tensei. As Dustless shouted, the unmoving coffin on the ground suddenly lifted up. Then, the entire surface of the coffin burst open, revealing a few familiar cold faces. Then, after a few seconds, they all opened their eyes. Whiz! 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 Several sharp sounds broke through the air in succession. In the darkness where you couldn't see your own fingers, you could vaguely see a few hazy black shadows pouncing on Wu Qin from all directions. Their hands were shining with cold light, and they were obviously holding sharp weapons. As expected, keeping your consciousness was the wrong choice. Although a pure killing machine is cruel, it is very suitable for old antiques like you. His left eye suddenly turned into Rinnegan, and the calm corner of his clothes was blown up, followed by an invisible repulsive force that was unstoppable. Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang, several shadows were forced back in the blink of an eye, and their bodies were ruthlessly scattered. Their faces came into view. They were the previous Hokage led by Hashirama. Even with the immortal body, it is easy to kill you. You don't want to die again. Dustless's eyes were as calm as stagnant water, and he looked indifferently at the people who were knocked down. His emotionless expression and cold voice coincided with the cold killing machine. Have you ever seen a Hokage compromise with the enemy? Uchiha Dustless. An old but full of energy roared. It was the Sandaime Hokage who was glaring at them. The other Hokages were silent, their eyes were cold as they stared at Wuchen, silently expressing their position. In that case, I can only deprive you of your consciousness. Although your combat power will decrease, it doesn't matter, the immortal body is enough to make up for the decrease in strength. With a strange smile, the originally expressive faces of the Hokage instantly became pale and indifferent, and their eyes were replaced by emptiness. In an instant, Dustless brutally deprived them of their consciousness. Originally, for the sake of Tsunade's face, I could reluctantly let you go once and keep your own consciousness. You don't know what's good for you, so you can only blame yourself for this. Dustless glanced at them indifferently. These so-called Hokage are still stubborn, and now things have changed, and time and space have changed, and the deep-rooted ideas in their hearts seem to be affecting their reason. There was no market for the will of fire in the past. Now in this world, there was similarly no market. But to Dustless, these few super powerhouses were all divine weapons used to kill in the dark. It doesn't matter if their strength decreases, the immortal body is enough to make up for the deficiency. In this world, no one knows the truth-seeking bull. Chapter 579. Pursing his lips, Wuchen was disdainful of these old fogies in front of him. They were always talking about unity and guarding the future, but they have always been singing a one-man show. In the past, no one cared about them. The situation in this world is more complicated and changeable. Their saintly mentality will only make them a laughingstock. Ninjas are very ugly, but they are slightly inferior to pirates. Pirates have no morality. 1 second, they can call each other brothers, and the next second, they can fight against each other. Time passed quickly, and 7 days passed in a blink of an eye. Because of Dustless's interference, the whole world was full of gunpowder, so almost all the pirates stared at the movements of the Bigumamu pirates and became the target of public criticism in an instant. During this period, it is worth mentioning that Thatch, the captain of the 4th Division under Whitebeard, came to secretly steal the dark fruit. He was easily defeated by Bigumamu and tore off an arm of the other party. Even Blackbeard was beaten to a pulp. Whitebeard knew that he went berserk on the spot and led the entire Whitebeard pirates to invade. He fought with the Bigumamu pirates for a day and gained the upper hand. Now Whitebeard is only in his 60s. Although his body has begun to decline, he is still in the golden age of his peak and can be said to be invincible. As one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, Bigumamu is obviously inferior to Whitebeard. Using the powerful ability of Tremor Fruit, Gura no Mi, and showing the power to destroy the world, he easily destroyed the island where Bigumamu was entrenched and temporarily repelled the Bigumamu pirates. Damn, someone must have plotted against me, damn dark fruit. Countless blood vessels spread in her eyes, and Bigumamu roared angrily, venting her inner depression and indignation. Looking at her, her body was not inferior to the giant clan. Her body was covered with blood, and even some parts had traces of depression. These were all thanks to Whitebeard. This is too strange. It must be some bastard who plotted against me. If I don't break your bones and scatter your ashes, I can't vent the hatred in my heart. Bigumamu gasped and roared in a low voice, no different from a hysterical beast. At first, Big Mama didn't think much of it, but later, as more and more pirates challenged her, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. The big Imam pirates are powerful enough to destroy the world, but if they are targeted by the whole world, they will die. It is obvious that someone is plotting against her and she has become the target of the whole world. Bang! He angrily threw the metal box containing the dark fruit away, and a dent was formed on the deck of the battleship. As if he was still angry, he stomped on it a few times. Baigu Mamu's heart felt stifled. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, she would have given herself a slap. Her whole body was trembling with anger, and her eyes were about to pop out. This was not the strongest devil fruit that could increase the fleet's strength, but a well-deserved death curse. It won't take long for the big Imam pirates to be wiped out by the whole world. Boom boom boom. The dizzying roar suddenly came, and the surrounding sea shook violently. Baigu Mamu, who was caught off guard, was splashed with water stains all over her body. The cold sea water was biting and cold. Instead of extinguishing the fire in Baigu Mamu's heart, the fire became bigger and bigger, burning her reason. Marine. A group of shameless villains, still as despicable as ever. There is a bottom line for looking down on people. Yonko, for emperors, is Yonko, for emperors, unless the two old things Garp and Sengoku come in person. Baigu Mamu sneered again and again, and the two characters, Garp and Sengoku, came to her and gave her a headache. After all, both of them had fought with Roger, and their strength was almost deified. In fact, Baigu Mamu was not afraid of Garp and Sengoku, but that was before. She had fought with Whitebeard for nearly a day and suffered a lot of injuries. She had no energy to deal with peerless powerhouses like Sengoku and Garp. If other people come, they will die. Even if an admiral comes, Baigu Mamu will dare to fight, not to mention that Marine Admiral is in a miserable state. Mom, the Marine is here. A group of embarrassed younger brothers ran over and attached themselves to Baigu Mamu, tired of dealing with them. Their expressions were decadent, and their exhausted appearance was obviously mentally and physically exhausted. These days, they have fought against many opponents, and their energy has long been squandered. Baigu Mamu's eyes narrowed, and the expressions of these people were all in her eyes. On the surface, she was unmoved, but in fact, she was secretly worried. Once the people's hearts were scattered, her pirates were about to come to an end. It seems that it is necessary to win a battle to restore confidence. Staring at the marine fleet in the distance, Baigu Mamu intended to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. When she was about to send the pirates over, a sentence from her subordinates abruptly broke her dream. Garp, that old thing, personally led the team, followed by a young man. According to the outline, it is very similar to the honorary admiral in the Marine newspaper last time. The merciless words made Baigu Mamu's face red and her neck thick. She held back her words for a long time and took them back. An admiral and Garp, I am afraid that it is likely to be her. After days of hard fighting, it is not suitable to fight again, quickly retreat. Baigu Mamu showed an expression of sympathy for her subordinates, but her expression was extremely ugly, and she was more sad than eating 10 pounds of flies. The crew didn't talk nonsense when they heard this, and they drove the ships at full power to avoid the Marines' shelling. The energy of people has a limit, and they have reached the bottleneck. How could it be that kid? With the excellent vision of the telescope, Baigu's mom saw Wu-chin standing side by side with Garp at a glance. She immediately widened her eyes and said incredulously. At the same time, she didn't forget to reprimand her subordinates. Increase the speed of navigation. Who dares to slack off, I will throw him into the sea to fill the stomach of the Sea King. Baigu Mamu's old face twitched, and she cursed her bad luck. Dustless's strength was enough to fight the Yonko, for emperors, and even suppressed the strength of the Yonko, for emperors. Once such a person joins forces with Garp, I am afraid that in the future, there will be a big pirate named Baigu Mamu. P.S. Baigu Mamu's men did call her mother, which sounds disgusting, but the truth. Chapter 580. Boom boom boom, monstrous waves were set off around the fleet, and the sea water of more than 10 meters almost swallowed the Bigumamu pirates. The sea water had wet Bigumamu's bulky coat. Nevertheless, her forehead was sweating uncontrollably. For the first time in her life, she showed a fearful expression. Now she was already bruised, and Garp was enough for her to drink a pot. If dustless was added. Thinking about it, Bigumamu couldn't help but feel a chill, and her body uncontrollably retreated. Big bandits like Bigu's mom were not afraid of death, but if the enemy was an invincible existence, then they would be an idiot to recklessly face it head-on. Of the 36 stratagems, escape is the best stratagem, which is vividly reflected in the hands of pirates. Although her teeth were itching with anger, Bigumamu had to admit that going against the current would only lead to her own destruction, and she had to escape. This is the way to survive. Where there is life, there is hope. Let's wait and see. Through the sight of the telescope, she glanced fiercely at the Marines, and with the most vicious language in her life, she did not hesitate to curse the attacking Marines. Well, what's with that guy's eyes? Her eyes suddenly fell on Dustless, and Bigumamu was surprised. Dustless seemed to be aware of Bigumamu's spying, and he raised the corners of his mouth, with a bright smile. He looked quite approachable, and his smile was like a warm spring breeze in March, which was refreshing. However, Bigumamu's eyes were full of different meanings. Contempt, ridicule. In short, Bigumamu's eyes were laughing at her powerlessness. Dustless's light and elegant smile was the embodiment of her powerlessness. It was precisely because she couldn't threaten Wu Qin with her strength that the latter had such a relaxed expression. He was quietly contemptuous and didn't need any words to modify it. The calmer Dustless was, the more it was an insult to Bigumamu, a naked contempt. In the dark, Bigumamu saw Dustless's unscrupulous ridicule, and her eyes were about to burst. Mom, you, the crew members looked at Bigumamu in fear. In a trance, they even saw the miserable appearance of Bigumamu, and subconsciously took a step back. Bigumam pirates, Captain Charlotte Lingling, bounty of, one of the Gyonko, for emperors, in the second half of the New World, the crew called her, Mother, when she was young. Dustless looked at the information about Bigu's mom in his hand. It was all sent by the Navy. It was just simple basic information. For Dustless, as an honorary admiral, it was just a small matter. Dustless had a strange expression on his face when he saw the word mother. Hee hee. It seems like you have the same idea as this old man. Seeing Dustless's strange expression, Garp's face was full of wretchedness, and his strange laughter made people speechless and tangled.